So the process of incarnation is symbolized by the priest's vestments. Jesus invalidates the second temple and institutes the Last Supper, which happens at Passover, but is a better representation of the atonement ritual, despite when it's happening in the calendar, as a genuine atonement which brings back the ritual and liturgy of the first temple. And so we proclaim Jesus is Lord and our great high priest. And he's anointed, just like the high priest was. He is Christ, the anointed one. And so, there's a whole book, Echoes of First Temple Liturgy and Christian Praxis, where Margaret goes through all the places where there's resonances between the earliest liturgy that we know of in Christian tradition and things which it seems were done in the First Temple, based on some of the echoes that we see in the Qumran literature and in Enoch and other stuff. She's got a whole bunch of stuff where she talks about Revelation as being an account of First Temple liturgy, a memory of First Temple liturgy. I have a lot of Gnostic stuff as being First Temple liturgical memory happening in oral tradition. So there's a speculation that one of the things Jesus passed on to his first disciples, some of the early patristics talk about this. They talk about the written down stuff that the Lord passed on to us in the Gospels, and then there's the secret knowledge, which is passed on to us in the mysteries. That's kind of explicit in some of the early church stuff, that Jesus passed on liturgical practice to his first disciples, and that was carried on through early history. So I'll pause there for a sec, because that was quite a lot. Does anybody want to kick the tires or slam a door?
I'm interested to see how the I don't even know how to phrase the question, it's so ambiguous. What was the connection that drew the first temple liturgy through to Jesus? Was it just racial memory, quote unquote, or the stories of the community, or?
She doesn't really advance a firm theory. There's some obvious places you could go look, and Egypt's an obvious place. Since we know Hebrew liturgical practice there is a temple in Egypt that persisted through the First Temple period. It's quite likely they would have largely preserved First Temple practice because they weren't in the Kingdom of Judea during the difficult period. So perhaps he was bringing it back from there. Maybe it's a Qumran thing. Maybe it's the Therapeutae. Maybe it's something else. But there's these constant rumours that Jesus was educated in some kind of school environment that was outside of the Palestine area, and maybe this is what he picked up while he was there.
Pure fantastic speculation about where he may have gotten that from. Yahweh predates the Hebrews, the Israelites. We're pretty certain that it's not proven, but it looks good. And of course, Yahweh is associated with the south, one of the areas being the Sinai, which is on your way to Egypt. It could quite be that maybe Jesus ran into the Canaanites or the Midianites somewhere along the way.
Yep.
I don't.
And there's enough of a robust tradition that's genuine Hebrew religion, as opposed to the kind of imposed Hebrew religion that those idiots back in Palestine are still practicing.
Oh, with the El and all the rest of the Canaanites.
Yeah, but I'm saying he might have run into those people and kind of come to understand that there was
because we know that there were temples there. I remember Katilat is there, and yeah.
The other thing I think is it's kind of cute. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. What's the Word? If you're a Hermeticist, it's Yod He Vav He. It's kind of obvious. It's kind of slapping in the face, right? So, okay, here we are. We're two persons into the Trinity. We've got El, God Most High, the Ancient of Days, the antecedent of time. We've got Yod He Vav He, and Jesus is anointed as the human manifestation of Yahweh. So Yahweh is the second person of the Trinity, the Son of God Most High, which is his title all the way through the Old Testament. It's kind of one of those, it's like, seeing the burn marks in the corner of the film, I swear. If you make the mistake of falling under the evil spell of this dangerous woman, as I seem to have done, it's kind of like, obviously.
What are you saying about the epithet El Elyon again? Say this again. Because that epithet is from El, not Yahweh. It's taken from El.
Which one?
El Elyon.
Yeah, I know.
Right.
So that's the first father.
Oh, right.
Not Yahweh.
Yeah, okay, got it.
Does she do any looking around into what's left of the Samaritan and Canaanite communities? Because it seems to me that their unadulterated practice could bear some...
Really interesting, right? Samaritan communities would be really interesting, because that's Hebrew religion.
It is, exactly.
But it's not Judean Hebrew religion.
And they're not quite the only ones. There's like 2 or 3 communities that will go maybe as far as the Pentateuch and then all that other stuff that's, newfangled city slicker stuff.
Yeah, sure. None of the stuff that I've read, but there's a lot of Margaret I haven't read, so.
Okay.
Look, we've got 2 minutes. I don't want to leave this bit out. Okay, the last speculation, this is in a great book called The Lady of Jerusalem, asks who is the Queen of Heaven, okay? Queen of Heaven, of course, is one of the many titles of Mary. Now, as we all know, Mariology is a hideous, heretical imposition that was brought in by some kind of weird Ishtar Isis cult and imposed on the church by crazy Alexandrians sometime in the 2nd century and perpetuated by the vicious apostates of the Roman Catholic Church. Genuine Christianity, as we all know, is pure, patriarchal, and monotheistic. Or not. Barker does, I can't go into any of the details because I don't have time and I'm not thoroughly enough across the text, but this is a great book and I really recommend reading it. I can give you the correct title later, but First Temple liturgy, it's pretty clear. It actually says it in Jeremiah during the discussion of Josiah's purges. There was a figure in the temple called the Queen of Heaven. She was identified with wisdom. She's the mother of Yahweh, and in First Temple times, the royal high priest becomes the human manifestation of Yahweh, and the king's mother becomes identified with the Queen of Heaven. Of course, this has the superficial resemblance this seems to bear to Mary and Jesus is, of course, completely coincidental and has no bearing on anything at all. So she's manifest as the Queen Mother. Interestingly, so there's a whole bunch of stuff about how in the Second Temple period, we do it the right way and we go into the temple and we do not do as our ancestors do and face towards the sun, because they're crazy types. We face towards God into the temple. So what's that about, actually? What's this facing towards the sun stuff? Because facing towards the sun, towards the east, is one of the characteristics of Christian liturgy. Right? It's one of those things that happens really early in the church. So there's a lot of stuff that suggests that the Queen of Heaven was characterized by offerings of bread and wine, and that she was identified with the sun. So the reason the shewbread disappears from the temple after the First Temple period is because the Queen of Heaven gets removed from the temple. Philo says at some point, wisdom is God's archetypal luminary and the sun is a copy and image of it. So when you say the Eucharist is a solar liturgy and so it shouldn't have any Sophia in it, well, maybe. It all gets very messy. So I love this. It's really intriguing because there's a huge number of places where it lines up both with Orthodox Christianity and with Gnosticism. It's really fascinating. You get back to this First Temple stuff and we seem to be getting handed a Trinity that looks pretty much like a Paleo-Trinitarian conception from early Christianity. And it weaves together this kind of interesting... So who's Yaldabaoth in this picture? So we've got this Yahweh who comes back from Babylon as a Yahweh who's saying, I am the only God. There are no other gods before me. Get this Queen of Heaven woman out of the temple. She's not real. I am El. There is no higher God. I am the only God. Sound familiar? This kind of claim sounds kind of reminiscent to me somehow. Anywho, I think that's nearly it. Okay, so one of her titles is... Okay, so this is longbow speculation, but one of the titles that's assigned to God in the Old Testament is El Shaddai. That's classically translated as God Almighty. Okay. El, God, Shaddai, mighty? Sure, that's one way of translating it. There's a not uncommon etymological speculation. Shad can mean destruction. So it can mean God the Destroyer. Sorry?
Nothing, go ahead.
Shad means breast, bosom. So there is a common etymological speculation that rather than meaning God Almighty, it could mean God with heavy breasts. Now, as a complete coincidence, one of the archaeological puzzles in parsing this monotheistic religion of the Hebrews is the wide prevalence of these all over Judea in archaeological digs. They found 700 or 800 of these in ordinary households. They're called Judean pillar figurines. Now clearly this is some weird outside cult object that's got imported into Judea that people are secretly doing in their homes. Maybe. Or maybe this is objects to venerate the Queen of Heaven because you can't get to the temple all the time. but you still want to venerate perhaps the most important divine figure that you've got in life. And possibly the Shaddai, meaning both breast and destruction, is a sort of a pun, because mother goddesses in the Near East are often both fertility and destruction configured in one being. That's not that unusual. Okay, that's it, pretty much. My summary at the end is really, okay, this is who we've talked about. The last little piece I just wanted to talk about is that power, periphery, and rage thing. Each of these women choosing to devote their lives, 20 or 30 years, to taking a stance which is at odds with the mainstream of theology or the mainstream of the institutions that they're trying to live and practice in. And as a result of that, standing their ground and trying to say what they want to say. A lot of them have faced a lot of difficulty and persecution, mansplaining, people trying to tell them they're wrong and stupid, and often because of their gender. Unsurprisingly, several of these women end up being really angry. I've done a little bit of work trying to deal with racism in the gay community, and one of the deepest things I've had to learn in the work of doing that is that when you do stuff with ethnic minority communities, one of the first things you've got to deal with is they're always angry. They're always pissed off. And if you want to help, if you want to be an ally to people facing that sort of situation, the first thing you've got to learn is how to sit through anger. And the anger is often directed at you, personally, as a representative, illegitimately or legitimately, but as a representative of the people that they're feeling to oppress them. So if you want to be of any assistance, you've just got to sit there and wait for the anger to get vented and not take it personally. In general, I feel that if you're encountering anger, I think there's a real value in... I couldn't adequately express how much benefit I've got from the thought of these 5 women over the last 4 or 5 years. Each of them has been really pivotal in shifting and transforming my understanding of things, helping me see my tradition in a different and fresh way. Fresh yet traditional way, which is I think the gifts each of the 5 of them bring. I wouldn't have that if I'd switched off the second they started getting cranky at me specifically, Maggie Ross being a really canonical example. So here's my concerns. I think these are interesting ideas. I commend these 5 authors to you and the stuff that they write. And I commend to you the practice of listening through anger, really. Particularly when you're dealing with people that you know have been marginalised historically, because I think that's a really important thing. That's it. Thank you very much. Happy to answer questions over dinner.